From gelatinous cubes to icosahedrons, nerds like a lot of things, but there's something they love above all else, and that is correcting people. This is a very special Dungeons & Dragons only episode of Actually. Joining us today, we have Gus Sorola.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for being here. We have Matt Mercer.
Hi. Happy to be joining you, nerds.
And we have Amy Vorpahl.
Just kidding. I didn't disappear. I'm right here.
Taking advantage of our technical issues.
Well, I can't rip on your joke because I've got to put my headphones back. Sure, it was a great joke.
So, Matt and Amy, you've played before. Gus, welcome for the first time here. The rules are so simple. I have here a stack of statements. These are incorrect statements about Dungeons & Dragons. It's up to you to find the thing I've said that's wrong, buzz in, and correct me. You can interrupt me whenever you want. You don't need to wait for the question to finish. And all your corrections must be preceded with the phrase, actually. How are you all feeling, aside from, the general state of the world?
Conscious?
Great.
Yeah, I like digital backgrounds, so I'm doing great.
When I was a little boy, when I was a teenager, my father told me I was wasting time playing Dungeons & Dragons, so I'm here to prove him wrong. In your face, Dad.
That's right. His dad.
I think of that Far Side comic that is the there's like a little kid playing Nintendo and two proud parents standing behind him, and just imagining the classified ads that are like, someone needed to save Princess, big money payout, and the fact that was ludicrous enough to be a Far Side comic and just has become straight reality. It's like, well, I guess that's what this is now.
We don't have talking cows yet, but the year still has halfway to go.
Yeah, we're working on it. Well, great. We'll jump right in here with our first statement. Hey, are you a spellcaster or just an asshole? All of the following are spells you might learn in 5th edition that are also just things a jerk might do or have. Glibness, interrupt, dominate person, mislead, cause fear. Mercer has buzzed in.
Actually, interrupt is not a spell in 5th edition D&D.
That is correct. Interrupt is not a spell. It sounds like it could be, but are all. And I do love how many spells sound like just being a jerk.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a sizable part of the game that I feel like can be wish fulfillment for those of us who got pushed around in high school to turn around, and now we get to be the dicks, and they just wanted to give the tools to do it.
Yeah.
Dan Telford just wrote an article on D&D Beyond, not just, but sometime this year, and all the days are blending together. But he you could have a different alignment that's just petty, and I love that as an idea for a character.
Yeah. After listening to all these spells, I want to add my own. I'd like to cast Gaslight as a level 4 spell, please.
Yeah.
Well, that point will go to Matt, and your buzzers are reset. We'll go on to our next statement here. Items in D&D draw their inspiration from a wide variety of places. Some come from myth and folklore, like 7-league boots and carpet of flying. Some come from history, like studded leather armor and tridents, while others come from published works of fiction, like Vorpahl sword or ion stones.
Actually, ion stones aren't from a published work of fiction.
They are, and Gus is immediately nodding because it seems like he knows where they're from. But those are from Jack Vance's Dying Earth series.
Oh.
Matt, you had buzzed in as well. Do you have an answer?
I believe you had said, actually. Yeah. I believe you. I was going to clarify before actually giving my statement, but I will make it part of the statement. I believe you had said 7-league boots, and I do not believe that is an item in D&D.
Oh, I think they are. At least it is somewhere.
It might be.
We'll have Saltzman check it out.
Probably right.
I always get nervous anytime anyone says anything a little too confidently. It's like, oh shit, did I fuck up? But no, that's not the answer we're looking for.
I figured.
Actually, tridents don't really exist. They're a work of fiction.
I I love it, but no. But you're also not that far off. I'll call this one. Gus was actually kind of the closest one here, and if you had guessed the other one, you would have been right. The weird thing here is that studded leather armor actually has no historical basis. And in fact, if you were to put studs into your armor, most people agree that that would make your armor weaker. And most people, a lot of people think that Gygax misunderstood illustrations of brigandine armor, which is where there are studs that are part of the thing you're wearing that fix plate to basically like the undergarment. But the idea of like putting like big old metal studs into leather armor is both historically inaccurate and a bad idea for armor in general.
Oh, do you mean a nerd came up with an idea that had no real logic to it? They just wanted to look cool? Okay.
And then claim their knowledge was based in actual factual history?
I can't imagine that happening. Now time to open up my big file of female armor.
Now I got to go through my closet and throw away all my studded leather.
It's
Don't
dangerous.
keep laughing at me at Ren Fair.
It's not right.
You know, that actually brings up a good point, because now it's dangerous that, elementary school kids, their first introduction to any of this is the internet, and they're probably just believing it.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that'll be fine in the long run, right?
Yeah. Just kids, if you're watching, just go to Google, type up leather studs. I'm sure nothing bad will pop up.
Big leather studs. We'll move on here to our next question. Slaty are bipedal frog-like creatures with a variety of different forms. Blue slaty produce other blue slaty with a lycanthropy-like disease, and red slaty reproduce by planting eggs under a host's skin. If the host of either is a spellcaster, the result is a more powerful green slade, who can go on to transform into several other types, including gray, death, white, and black. Gus.
Actually, death is not a type.
Death is a type, which is weird because all the rest are colors, and it's just like, but we'll throw some death in there too. Amy.
Actually, black is not a type.
Black is a type as well. Yeah. Matt.
Actually, white is not a type.
White is also a type. Yeah. Amy.
Actually, the host doesn't necessarily have to be a spellcaster for the transformations.
It does, yeah.
Wow! What could the real answer be?
So what we're looking for here is blue slade produce red slade by the system described, and red slade produce blue slade. After that, everything else is the same, but like blue slade can only produce red and vice versa. And
what is this? Animal Crossing flowers?
Well, we'll move on to our next question. This is a fan question. So this comes to us from one of our viewers. This is from Runcible Shaw, and it is about the Dungeons and Dragons Saturday morning cartoon. Dungeons & Dragons, the Saturday morning cartoon based on the tabletop role-playing game and co-produced by Marvel Productions and TSR, premiered in 1983. The plot centers around 6 children being magically transported into the game of D&D they're playing. The children, Hank, Eric, Diana, Presto, Sheila, and Bobby, are joined by their unicorn companion, Uni. Together they must decipher the enigmatic clues of the Dungeon Master in order to defeat their enemy Vengar and find the way back to their own world. Yes, Gus.
Actually, Marvel was not involved in the production.
Weirdly, Marvel was, yeah. Matt.
Actually, the children weren't actually playing the game when they were sucked into it.
That's correct. What seems like the most logical way to get into a D&D cartoon, and one that certainly other shows and things have used, but not the case here. They were just they're just sort of transported. The children actually never play Dungeons & Dragons in the real world. They're just transported into the realm of Dungeons & Dragons when they actually ride an amusement park ride named Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, the game Dungeons & Dragons never appears in the cartoon, although elements of the game do.
You know what's weird is I knew that. I knew they rode a ride. I didn't. That's the only part of the cartoon I've ever seen is the opening with the song.
That was the one memory giveaway for me. But I was like, they were on like an amusement park ride when they got pulled in there, didn't they?
It's so strange that they already had the it. It was like they kept so many elements the same. It was like it's such like an A to B or like an A to lowercase a translation, of like, all right, they're doing something fun and that transports them into the real world. Should it be the actual game that exists in the real world? No, it's an amusement park ride.
Well, yeah, and it's a panic move of like, no, D&D is fun, everybody. D&D is fun.
Well, and consider too, like, how not fun would it be as a 12-year-old kid who had never played D&D and didn't really want anything to do with it to be thrust into second edition? Like, that would just be overall a soul-crushing experience.
Well, when I started playing, I grew up in a really small town, and so me and my friends had to try to find books at secondhand bookstores. So we got started with original D&D with like hit tables. So yeah, by the time second edition came around, we were like, thank God for THAC0. We were just like, we were so over having to look up all that stuff every time.
What a
no one has ever
archaic
said thank
phrase.
God for THAC0.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
I just like hearing in Hollywood, like, new D&D movie is confirmed at Paramount. Nope. At Universal. Nope. Like, they just keep like shifting it around. Like, oh, these people are gonna crack it, and like, what makes D&D fun and cinematic? And it's like, yeah, I think Critical Role did it, y'all.
I remember going into the theater when the movie came out back in 2000. I was like, oh, Jeremy Irons, this is gonna be incredible. And I got my whole game group together to go see it, and we just kind of sat there in stunned silence through most of it. And when it finished and the credits rolled, we all stood up and went like, well, damn, our game looks great now.
Well, cool. That point will go to Matt, and we will move on to our next question, which is our first shiny question of the game. This is a game we're calling Find the Fake. So in just a second on this screen, we're going to show you 6 images of monsters from monster manuals. These are illustrations pulled from monster manuals, except for one, which is a fake that does not actually exist. The first person who can identify the fake illustration will get the point. Let's go ahead and take a look at those monsters. Matt has buzzed in.
Actually, I believe the weird scrawny duck thing in the middle top is not an actual monster in D&D.
That actually is. That is a thought eater, is what that is. This weird platypus thing.
Sure.
Yeah. Amy and then Gus.
Actually, the chair looks like it's trying to be a mimic, but I think they're only illustrated as chests.
You have identified it. Yes, that chair, that fake monstrous chair is not a real monster. That's something I just made up called a monstrous chair. Monstrous chair, though it looks a bit like a mimic, does not actually exist in D&D. So the top left is of course, our iconic beholder. I did want to include it, though, just because I think that illustration looks it looks insane. Yes. The art, I think, in the early editions, it's like oh, that it feels a little like a home game, you know?
Yeah, the early editions transcend biology, ecology, anthropology. Like, there's no real combination of science going on in this land.
And yet,
I mean, come on, they even have studded leather.
Yeah,
exactly. We have a flump over there on the upper right?
That's a flump, yes.
Is that a bag of devouring on the bottom right?
So that is a cushion fungus. And then also this thing that looks like we just made a mistake in the lower middle, that is actually the official art in the first or second edition for Invisible Stalker.
Yes. That was my favorite thing in the old monster manual.
Oh my gosh.
Someone that day was like, I'm going home early. Draw an Invisible Stalker, you say? Well, let me work hard on this one.
I like to think that they spent weeks working on it, then they accidentally like threw it away, or the cleaning crew came through and tossed their sketch, and like the deadline was coming up and they're like, oh no it's gonna turn into a blank piece of paper.
Someone comes into the office and there's just like frazzled hair and crumpled up paper all around them, and like it's like, what's going on in here? Like unraveling every piece of paper, and it's all the same blank piece of paper. It's like, I can't quite get the details right. Look here.
Wait, tell me, what is the platypus golem thing called?
That is a thought eater.
I think he thinks he's cute, like he's out there going, hey.
Amy has got a point. Cool. So our current score, Gus, with unlimited potential, currently at 0, but many questions remain. 2 for Matt, 1 for Amy. And we'll move on to our next question. The Blood War is an ancient conflict between the devils of the 9 hells of Baator and the celestials of the 7 heavens of Mount Celestia. The Blood War has been fought since the age before ages, before the material plane fully developed, and yes, who that is? Who's buzzing in? That's Mercer, yes.
Actually, the Blood War is fought between the devils of the 9 hells and the demons of the abyss.
That is correct. It's a war between devils and demons, not devils and angels. If you think about the alignment chart, it makes a certain amount of sense, but it does feel like, hey guys, you're more similar than you are different. Solve this.
And yet, what's more human when you get down to it?
A true allegory for 2020. Let's find a common ground and work together.
Straight up.
Well, cool. We'll move on to our next question here. This one's going to be about books. Some Dungeons & Dragons books here. Doerden is a major character in the books of R.A. Salvatore. His preferred weapons are a pair of scimitars, Icing Death, a frost weapon that protects against fire, and Vidranath, aka Lullaby. Matt.
Actually, Drizzt swords are Icing Death and Twinkle.
Yes, that's correct. His other sword is called Twinkle. I will say he did wield Vidranath for a while after Twinkle broke, but the 2 swords were forged together into a new and better Twinkle, but still Twinkle.
That's amazing.
Do you think he mumbles that one under his breath? What was the name of your second sword?
Icing Death and Twinkle. But also, I'm sorry, what was that? Did you say?
On one hand, yeah, it is kind of ridiculous to imagine a first is trying to be a badass, especially a 90s badass fantasy hero with a sword named Twinkle. But what's worse than having your enemy on the ground bleeding out? By what have you slain me? You have fallen to the blade of Twinkle. Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
To just be like, here's the thing. If I die, I just don't want to die from Twinkle.
Other sword, is that okay?
Yeah.
Does Twinkle have magical powers? Like Icing Death, it protects against fire, I guess? Or is Twinkle just a blade?
From what I'm reading in very quickly pulled up in the wiki, it actually can impart weak base emotions upon its wielder. I guess it's an intelligent object. It glows softly when there's danger nearby. So it's like Sting plus Spider Sense.
So I wonder where they got that inspiration.
Yeah.
Weird. How original.
Even Sting, which is a little cutesy, still sounds more fearsome than Twinkle.
Yep.
Well, cool. That point will go to Matt, and I will remember to reset your buzzer now. And we'll go on to our next question here. The alignment system of D&D is one of its most notable features. While alignment in 5e is mostly used for flavor and character development, in previous editions, alignment could have very real mechanical effects on your gameplay. Items like Helm of Opposite Alignment could change a character's alignment, and some spells, like Holy Word, negatively affect evil creatures specifically. Yes, Amy, and then Gus close behind her.
Actually, the way most people play 5e, including me, negates alignment or kind of puts that on the back burner, but it still does technically have real in-game consequences.
It can. That's not what I'm going for. I'm trying to sort of get across the idea that the fact that you can now just sort of be we'll sort of wash over it. You can let it have some effects, but it's not as written into the rules as some early editions. Gus.
Actually, Holy Word was not restricted to evil creatures.
That is correct. Do you know specifically what it is? I'll give you the point anyway.
No, I'm trying to remember. I'm racking my brain, but I can't call up the specifics.
Sure. So Holy Word actually doesn't affect evil creatures. Holy Word affects non-good creatures, which means it also affects neutral characters, which seems evil to me.
Well, they haven't embraced the holiness.
Yeah. If you're just hey, if you're not good, fuck off.
There's like some druid minding his own business, picking mushrooms, ow!
Fuck off. You're either with us or against us. It's like, hey, buddy, I don't know if this is as good as you think it is. It seems like that's such like a very like specific like wording, because it's very easy to think, to like see the like, okay, holy word, non-good creatures, and like for your brain to kind of translate that as evil. And you could totally imagine some like rules lawyer campaign where like someone cast that and it's like, actually, yeah, your other adventurers here who are a little bit more neutral, they're all gonna get blasted by this fucking thing too. Sorry.
Yeah, that 6-year-old that you were saving, he did kind of burn a few ants with my glass, and so he's
good.
actually
That 6-year-old was not good. That can hurt.
morality.
It's a deer in the burn. I am good. Well, that point will go to Gus.
Are you shopping for a lot of family members right now? Well, a Hello Tushy bidet is a great gift for your eco-conscious cousin, your neat freak sister, your farty dad, or really anyone who poops. We all deserve a better clean and a healthier planet, don't you think? Hello Tushy sent me a bidet, and guess what? It was easy to install, and it works great. The Hello Tushy bidet attachment washes your bum with fresh water for a way better clean than toilet paper. You simply spray and pat dry. You can install the Hello Tushy bidet attachment to your existing toilet in less than 8 minutes. You don't need an electrician, and you don't need a plumber. Make the restroom your best room with the complete Tushy system, including the Tushy bidet attachment, ottoman, toilet brush, and Tushy stand and tissues. Join the millions of happy Hello Tushy customers right now who take care of their Yule logs the dignified way. Give the gift of a clean bum to yourself or your loved ones this holiday season and get 10% off plus free shipping right now at hellotushy.com/actually. That's hellotushy.com/actually for 10% off plus free shipping.
We will move on here to our next question, which is our second shiny question. This is a game called What's Wrong with This Picture? So in just a second, we're going to put an image up on the screen, and we've altered something about it. So something is not the way it should be. It'll be up to you to identify what is wrong. First person to do so will get the point. Let's take a look at this image. Now, this is a complicated one. I think you're able to zoom in. Hopefully you are, because there is a lot going on there. By design, a lot to look at here. And I'll say this kind of stuff is absolutely my shit. A well-ordered system that helps me understand a complicated lore. Mercer has buzzed in.
Yes, I'm actually right above the material plane. That should be the Feywild and not the Beastlands.
That is correct. We've swapped around the order, the location of the Beastlands and the Feywild. Let's take a look at the next image to see what it should look like. Boink! It's all the same.
Wow! That was very impressive.
There was a lot to look at there, but you found it. I don't have much else to add to that in terms of the conversation.
I've never seen this image in my life. I never really got into it, but this is quite fascinating. That, like, I didn't know. I would have said, something that sounds so, I don't know, in lore to be. It sounds weird for Hades and Limbo, that is definitely from religion, and other lore to be included in this. But I guess you can do whatever you want.
I feel like this scratches the same itch to me as looking at a fantasy map at the front of a novel, where it's like, yeah. Okay, I'm orienting myself in time and space. And I'm sure Matt can speak to this better than I can, but I think the idea is that these planes correspond to the alignment chart, basically. So there are planes that are this is a lawful good plane. This is and so on and so forth, which is why you have things like Limbo and Hades there that are pulled from mythology, but also well, this is going to fit in this how we're going to organize these particular alignments in interact with the world.
What does positive and negative plane mean?
It's similar way that it corresponds to alignment in some ways to older editions, but also just kind of positive and negative energy. Positive being the energy of life and creation, negative being the snuffing of life or the destruction of things, entropy. That's kind of what it's going for. And then you have left to right as the planes of law versus the planes of chaos. And it's all sounds really cool, and then you realize a lot of it's just borrowed heavily from metaphysics and religion. And it is a beautiful, it's beautiful. To Trap's point, I would totally have this on my wall. This is also one of the things you don't show somebody who's going so how do you play D&D?
So positive energy is, of course, crystals and smoothies. Negative energy is, thinking low self-esteem, thinking poorly of yourself, negative spots. So just like keep that in mind as you traveling through Outer Plain.
I want to play in that campaign.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Matt. On your map, you've replaced Bitopia with Pilates. Why did you do that?
Well, to get there, you have to traverse the Great Plains of Wheatgrass.
Cool. Well, that point we'll go to Matt, and we will go on to our next question here. Magic items. They're fun unless they're stupid. Some of these stranger items described in official game manuals include the Ring of Contrariness, the Horn of Baubles, the Ring of Bureaucratic Wizardry, the Belt of Impossible Girth, and the Brooch of Number Numbing. Gus.
Actually, the Brooch of Number Numbing is not a real item.
It is actually an official item described. It is an item that makes you temporarily forget what numbers mean. You remember what numbers are, but you don't remember if like 4 is bigger than 80. For it
seems very situational. A very situational piece of gear.
Really specific. And that's an item that can only be invented by nerds. So it's like you don't know math anymore.
The ultimate insult.
Yeah.
I have Amy buzzed in next, and then Matt. So Amy, what you got here?
Actually, it's the Horn of Bubbles.
The Horn of Bubbles is a real item that exists, but so too does the Horn of Baubles. Both are horns that exist. The Horn of Baubles creates a 5-foot cube of useless trinkets, and if you blow it more than once per hour, it has a 10% chance of sucking you into it and turning you into a thing of useless trinkets from which you die and from which there is no saving you or any kind of returning. A very useful item to have if you want trinkets and are okay with the possibility of permanent death. Matt, what's your answer here?
Actually, I believe it was the Belt of the Girdle of Impossible Girth is not an actual item.
Yes, the Belt of Impossible Girth is something that I just made up. That doesn't exist. That point will go to Matt. Just to cover the ones that we didn't talk about here, the Ring of Contrariness, which sounds like a fucking nightmare item. I swear to God, it renders you unable to agree with any thought, idea, or action. It also confers certain benefits, but that is it. You are unable to agree with anyone else at the table. With the Ring of Bureaucratic Wizardry, which, quote, when a wizard casts any spell while wearing the ring, a sheaf of papers and a quill pen suddenly appear in his hand. The papers are forms that must be filled out in triplicate, explaining the effects of the spell, why the wizard wishes to cast it, whether it is for business or pleasure, and so on. The forms must be filled out before the effects of the spell occur. The higher the level of spellcast, the more complicated the forms become. Filling out the forms requires 1 round per spell level.
Why?
Why? Oh my gosh.
All these items are items that are like designed to make the game less fun. Like it's not even like it's like, oh wow, what a crazy mechanic for me in game. It's like, no, you the player are going to have less fun playing this game now.
Is the Belt of Impossible Girth a condom?
No, that's a Belt of Impossible Birth. Very similar.
There we go. Well played. Well played.
Very good.
Oh, I want to give a point just for that.
Cool. Here's our next question. Most beholders are evil and xenophobic, but one specific beholder, Massive Mario, is more neutral. He has exceptional, some might even say godlike knowledge, and spends his days running his tavern, The Laughing Beholder, and listening to tales from adventurers.
Who?
Yeah, Gus.
Actually, his name is Large Luigi.
That is correct.
No.
Yes. Actually, his name is not Massive Mario. It's a Large Luigi. And I put this question in here just to force one of you to say that.
Gus, what?
I was making a joke. I was trying to be funny.
Wait, no. That was a joke, and you got it right?
Yeah.
Hell yes. That
My
is amazing.
mind is so blown. I don't know what's going on.
Mine is too. How did you guys? I feel like I'm being punked. Like there's some joke.
I'm familiar with Large Luigi. It's much better that you just did the opposite of what I did, which is saw Large Luigi and be like, I'm going to do a slightly.
You just made the birth joke, and then he's like on fire.
Saltzman looks like you maybe have some info for us on Large Luigi.
He's from Spelljammer. He's on the Rock of Brawl is where his bar is located, and he's considered the most famous beholder.
Well, cool. That point against all odds, going to Gus with a total shot in the dark, and a shot to the heart. You got Luigi. Cool. We'll move on to our last shiny question of the game. This is a variation on Order Up, an old game that we played that I'm calling Out of Range. You're going to see a collection of 7 spells. We're going to be looking to sort of collectively put these in order of the range of those spells from closest to farthest. So this is a bit of a very technical, rulesy kind of game because I felt like I had to have at least one of those in here. Buzz in if you think you know what the closest one is, and then the next closest and the next closest, and so on. So your buzzers are all set. Let's put those spells up. And if you think we'll start closest to farthest. So if you think you know what the closest spell is here, buzz in. Gus has buzzed in first. What do you got?
Actually, purify food and drink.
Nope, I put that in here to trick people up. That is not actually the closest one here, though it does make sense. Amy is next.
Magnificent Mansion.
That is incorrect. Matt, you've buzzed in. What is the closest range of the spells here?
Actually, Calm Emotions.
Also incorrect. Amy has buzzed in quickly.
Actually, I think you have to touch someone to raise dead.
That's correct. Raise dead is the closest one. That is in the touch. That is a range of touch. All right, I'm going to reset all your buzzers here for some quick draws, but now we're going for the next closest here. All right, that order is Amy, Gus, Matt. What is the next range here?
Actually, project image.
Incorrect. Gus.
Actually, calm emotions.
Incorrect again. Matt.
Actually, purify food and drink.
This is where Purify Food and Drink is. Sorry, Gus. Purify Food and Drink has a range of 10 feet. So I'm resetting these. We're going for the next one. We're running out of options here, so these should get gradually easier. That is Matt buzzing in. What is the next range here?
Actually, the next range is, I believe, Magnificent Mansion.
That is incorrect, actually. Incorrect. Amy, then Gus.
Actually, project image.
Incorrect. Gus.
Actually, calm emotions.
This is calm emotions. That has a range of 60 feet. I'm resetting these buzzers. What is next? That is Matt, then Amy, then Gus.
Actually, project image.
That is incorrect. Amy.
Actually, sending.
Incorrect. Gus.
Actually, magnificent mansion.
It is not yet. Those are all incorrect. So there's only a couple left here. I'm going to reset these buzzers, but it's going to be probably something of an Old West quick draw. And that is Amy, Gus, Matt.
Okay, so I'm actually magic missile.
It's magic missile. There's not much left there. Resetting those buzzers. We've only got 3 spells left. That is Amy, Matt, Gus.
Actually, calm emotions.
We already guessed that one.
Oh, shit.
Incorrect. Mercer, Amy made it a little has bowed out on this one.
Oh, no.
What is the next closest range?
Actually, it would be project image.
That is incorrect. Gus.
Actually, magnificent mansion is the correct answer.
It is magnificent mansion. So currently we've got 2 for Amy, 2 for Gus, 1 for Matt, and with only 2 left, this next round will be our last one because process of elimination will determine the last one. So I'm going to reset these. One more round here. What is the next farthest? That is Amy, then Gus, then Matt.
Actually, project image.
It is project image is the next one, which of course means sending is the last one. Let's take a look at what these ranges are. Great, so we talked about some of these already. I tried to pick ones that seemed like they kind of disobey the logic you're not expecting, like Raise Dead versus Purify Food and Drink. Project image is 500 miles, so you can totally like Luke Skywalker that shit and just send your image somewhere far away.
I just like that calm emotions just kind of, Gus, you really wanted that to be closer.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to calm someone down. You want them close to you. You hug them and bring them in.
It feels like the range should be like the range of a hug. It should be like, like whatever, like 2 arm lengths is. It's like that can calm some emotions, I love that Magnificent Mansion has a greater range than Magic Missile, because you think of Magic Missile as being able to just blast from far away, but if you for even farther than that, you can be like a house.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so weird. I probably knew that, but it hasn't been used in a long time, and 300 feet seems excessive for the effect of that spell.
And maybe it's for sort of the shock of it. Like if you want to really impress your adventuring party, to be like, it's like, oh, just wait till you see my lovely house. So you can approach it from afar and see the crowd. You're like, look at this. Yeah, pretty nice, huh?
That's a
you don't get the same effect if it's right in front of you. Well, great. Amy identified 3 of those. Gus got 2, Matt got 1. So Amy will get the point for that shiny question. Gus with 2, Mercer with 6 points, and Amy also with 2. And this brings us to our last question of the game, which, as always, concerns real-life skills. Nothing about D&D here, just some stuff about the real world. Your class can have a big effect on your life in the game, but what about your economic class in real life? Last year, the U.S. poverty threshold for a single adult under 65 was about $13,000. This number is adjusted upward by about 28% for a second adult in the household to about $16,000, and adjusted upward by about 50% for a single adult with 1 child to about $26,000. Yes, Amy?
Actually, that number is only adjusted for kids, but not for a second adult in the household.
That's incorrect. It does get adjusted. Matt?
Actually, this just continues to prove how broken the American economic system is. It should be much higher.
That is sort of the moral of this question, but that's not specific. That is not the specific figure that is wrong here. The poverty threshold number is wrong, but there is a different figure that is incorrect.
Hey, Gus, you got a joke here?
Yeah, this is ripe for joking. Actually, the number for a child and adult are flipped.
Interesting. They're not flipped, but the number, the figure for a single adult with 1 child is wrong. And since I don't just want to guess numbers forever, I'll go ahead and give you the point there. I said that if you are a single adult with 1 child, that number is adjusted up by 50%. In fact, it's only adjusted up by 32% to about $17,308. So that means that if you are a parent working a minimum wage job and worked a full year of 2,080 hours, you would still fall below the poverty threshold. So it is a stupid, fucked up world we live in, and that's the note we're going out on.
My God.
Things are dark right now.
Okay. I vote not Mike Trapp to be my next dungeon master.
Leave them laughing, right? I mean,
yeah. Listen, we're having fun here, but there's still serious shit to work out.
Well, yeah, true. That's actually true.
Yeah, catharsis and shared misery.
Cool. 3 points for Gus, 6 for Matt, 2 for Amy, making Matt our winner for this episode. Thank you very much for joining us here, talking about D&D, learning about beholders, learning about spells, doing all kinds of stuff. Join us next time for even more pedantic corrections here on Actually.